So I text my boyfriend, if you don't hear from me in the next 20 minutes, call 911. He responds, WTF, where are you? What's going on? I go to reply, my phone dies. That's when I get scared. I think to myself, you're trapped in this taxi. No one knows where you are. Your phone is dead. You're not getting out of this. You are not going home. You have been kidnapped. So there are probably only two people who know this full story of that taxi ride on that day. This day was one of the scariest days in my entire life. It's definitely something that I've never told publicly or on social media or anything like that. But, and this is going to sound so cliche, I'm telling this story because I really hope that my experience will help someone else. Like truly. Let's get into it. So at the time, my dream was to get my PhD. I wanted to be a clinical psychologist, open my own practice. That was my dream. In college, that was the only thing I wanted. But these programs are extremely competitive. My only shot of getting into one of these PhD programs was to have an amazing GRE score. If you don't know what a GRE is, the GRE is a standardized exam that graduate schools require for admission. So it's very similar to like the SAT, the ACT. You go to a testing center, you take the exam. I knew that I was gonna have to study my butt off. I waited until the last possible moment to schedule my exam because I wanted to maximize my study time. When I was finally ready to book the exam, a lot of the testing centers did not have space available. So the only place where I was able to find a testing center that had availability was like 45 minutes away. But I didn't have a car. Lyft and Uber were not around at the time. So my only options were public transportation, but the testing center was outside of the parameters of the train that was in the city. So I would have had to take a couple trains, like 2 or 3 buses. And I just didn't want to deal with that on the day of like what I thought at the time was like the biggest test in my life. I knew a couple of folks with cars, but my exam was so early, I didn't want to bother anyone. The exam, I think, was at like 8 a.m. So I figured I'd just take a taxi. Like I'd taken taxis plenty of times before. I had no issues. So the evening before my exam, I scheduled a pickup for the following morning. So the morning of my exam comes, I get a call from the taxi driver and says, you can go ahead and come on out. So I grab my stuff, rush out, see the taxi in front of the campus. I get in. The driver is a friendly, jolly, middle-aged man, and he was like making jokes and he was friendly. So we're just chit-chatting. He asks like, you're going out really far. Like, what's out here? And I tell him like, I'm going to take my GRE because I'm trying to get into graduate school. We go between chatting and then me looking at my phone to see if I could get any last-minute studying in. I'm trying to see if I could soak up any last-minute tips or whatever. Finally, when we pull up to the center, he asks me, how are you going to get back home? And I say, well, I was just going to call the taxi company and book another taxi. And he said, like, yeah, you can do that. But because it's so far from the taxi hub, you might have trouble getting another taxi. So why don't I just give you my number? When the exam is over, call me and I'll come back and get you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. That would be amazing. Like the exam should be over around this time. And he was like, perfect. I will start making my way out towards this area around that time so that when you call me, it won't take long for me to come get you. And so I'm like, perfect. So I save his number in my phone, go to take the exam. Everything's great. I'm done with the exam and I'm ready to be picked up. I call him. I say, hey, this is Cree. You dropped me off a couple of hours ago. I'm ready if you wouldn't mind still coming back to come get me. He's like, yeah, of course, no problem. I'll be there in about 10, 15 minutes. About 15 minutes later, as he said, he pulls up and I go to get in the car. There is a child in the car, a little boy who looks like he's about 8 or 9. I get in the seat, the taxi driver says, oh, this is my son. Hope you don't mind. I had to pick him up and he's just gonna go, sit in the car with us as I take you home. I am so exhausted mentally and physically from just taking a 4-hour exam. I think to myself, you know what? I don't even care. So I tell him, yeah, that's totally fine. Hey kid, nice to meet you. I'm in the backseat just relaxing. But after driving for about 5 minutes, the taxi driver looks up at the rear view mirror. That's how he's talking to me. And he says, do you mind if I make one quick stop? I have to pick up my other son. I didn't get a chance to do it while you were taking your test. It's on the way. It's literally 5 minutes or so from campus. Is that okay with you? I don't want to do this. I'm exhausted and I just want to go home. But I think to myself, this man has been so nice. He came all the way out here to come get me. He didn't have to. This is the least that I could do. I am uncomfortable. I think it's weird. I do think it's a bit weird to be running errands while you have a passenger in your taxi. But I think maybe I'm overreacting or I'm just being unreasonable. So I say, sure, no problem. We can go pick up your son. You said it's 5 minutes from campus. And he says, yeah, it's 5 minutes. It'll be real quick. We're not even gonna get out of the car. I'm just gonna call him and then he'll come right out. So I tell him, okay, no problem. We'll get your son and that'll be that. I lean back in the back seat. I'm just gonna be on my phone for a little bit, texting people. That's my plan anyways, but my phone is dying. So I asked the taxi driver for a charger. And he immediately, like very quickly, he answers, no, I don't have a charger, sorry. Like I usually have one, but I don't today. Now I don't wanna just be on my phone texting because if it dies, I have no phone and I'm still 30 minutes away from campus. I turn my phone on airplane mode to try to preserve some battery because at this point it's like at 2%. So we drive for about 30 minutes and we should be close to campus. But as I look around, I don't see anything that looks familiar. And since the taxi driver told me his son would only be about 5 minutes from campus, I should see something that is relatively familiar. But I don't recognize anything. I am convinced that I have never been here before. I have never seen this area before. So at this point, I'm uncomfortable. I'm nervous. I'm not scared yet, but I'm definitely nervous. But then I think, he's a taxi driver. Like, obviously, he knows all sorts of back ways. He probably just took a different route. You need to relax. That's what I tell myself. You need to relax. You're overreacting. It's fine. But that little voice in my head, the little voice that we all have, that like our conscience, I guess you could call it. That little voice is telling me something is not right. Something is not right. This doesn't make any sense. He said we should be 5 minutes from your campus. We're not 5 minutes from campus. We're just not. But I push it down. I push the little voice away because, again, I think I'm overreacting. I'm thinking this is just a good dad who is doing right by his kids. He did go out of his way to help me, and I don't want to be ungrateful. So I just sit back and I go with it. So after driving for a little bit longer, we pull into a neighborhood. And for some context, this almost looks like an abandoned neighborhood. It is in very rough shape. So we're driving. I'm looking around to see if anything looks familiar, but I still don't recognize anything. And I guess I wouldn't at this point because we're in someone's neighborhood. We pull up to a house that looks completely abandoned. Like it doesn't look like anybody could be living there. But we pull up to the house. We're sitting in front of the house. The taxi driver looks back at me and says, you should be out shortly. And so we're sitting there and we're waiting. And initially I'm thinking, okay, this is a kid. Like, kids lollygag. Kids take a long time to get ready. So it makes sense that he's taking long to come out. So let me just be patient and wait for this kid to come out. But I do ask him, I asked the taxi driver, is he going to be coming out soon? Is everything okay with him? And he says, yeah, you know what? Let me check. Let me give him a call and see where he is and when he'll be out. He calls, I'm assuming his son. Based on the conversation, it sounds like, his son will be out in a couple of minutes. But we wait for another 2 to 3 minutes, not very long after the phone call. I see the door open and I see a man come out. But I'm assuming that the man is someone else. Maybe the taxi driver's brother, maybe he's his son's uncle. I don't know. I'm just confused. I'm confused and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But the man walks up to the taxi and gets inside. The taxi driver says, this is my son. And I'm pretty speechless at this point because I was not expecting a grown man. So his son is probably in his late 20s, which people have gaps between kids, right? It's not uncommon, but for some reason, I was just not expecting a grown man to get in the car. I was expecting another kid. And so when this grown man gets in the car, I'm even more uncomfortable. But I'm thinking it's okay because now we should be 10 minutes from campus. I'm gonna be home in 10 minutes and I can just sleep and just like forget about this. But we're driving for another 10 minutes or so. Then his older son says, oh, I gotta get my check. But I'm thinking, they're just talking about their plans for the rest of the day. This has got nothing to do with me. However, taxi driver looks up in the rearview mirror again to me and says, I really hate to ask you this, but do you mind if we make one more stop? It's literally 2 minutes down the road. I just gotta take him to get his check. It's literally just 2 minutes. I'm not going for that. I don't wanna go for this at this point. I really don't. And I say, you know what? Would you mind just taking me to campus? I have a meeting, and I just made this up on the spot. I said, I have a meeting in 30 minutes, and I really need to get back to that meeting. Can you just take me home, and then is it possible for you to do this after? And he's like, it's literally just 2 minutes. I promise you, 2 minutes, he'll be in and out, and then we'll take you back home. And he says, it's gonna be out of the way for me to take you to campus and then come back here to get my son his check. I really don't want to do it. I just want to go home because I'm getting more and more nervous and anxious with every minute. The little voice in my head is getting louder and louder, telling me something is not right. But again, the other side of me thinks, don't inconvenience him just because you are anxious. I tell him, okay, but if we could please just go back to campus right after that because I don't want to be late to this meeting. So he says it's 2 minutes down the road, but we drive literally for another maybe 7 to 10 minutes, which may not seem like a long time if someone says 2 minutes and it's actually 7 minutes. But at this point, I am counting the minutes. So I'm thinking this is not 2 minutes away. Where are we going? But finally, we pull up to a very sketchy looking gas station. So this neighborhood, I don't know if it's the same neighborhood or a different one, if we were in a different area, but it's equally as sketchy. There are people hanging out in front of the gas station who also look very sketchy. And it's just it just does not look like a safe environment. But he stops the car, his son gets out, goes inside the gas station. His son is in the gas station for what feels to me like a long time. But at this point, I have a very skewed concept of time because I am scared. While he's inside, the little voice comes up again and says, you need to get out of this situation. You need to get out of this situation. And at this point, I agree, but I'm not going to just react. I could be in danger, so I have to handle this delicately. So I say to him again, I really appreciate you picking me up. I don't want to inconvenience you. Why don't you drop me off? Maybe if there's like a local store somewhere, you can drop me off and I can get another taxi. And he says, no, like we're close. We're very close. This is not going to take long. I will take you, but I don't want to stay in the car anymore. So I say to him, I just really need to get home and I don't want to rush you. So maybe you can even take me back to the testing center, which I know he's not going to do because I'm assuming we're at least far away from there.
I forgot to mention that when I suggest this, I offer to pay him for the trip he took to pick me up after my test was over and for the trip to wherever he's willing to drop me off at. I figured if it was just about the money, this should guarantee that he would let me out of the car.
And after I say that, his tone changes. He sounds really annoyed and agitated. He says, I just told you it's only going to be 10 minutes and then we will go to campus as soon as my son gets back in the car. You just need to have a little bit of patience. After he says that, that's when I get scared because I'm thinking, this man is not going to let me out of the car. He has just had a complete shift in his persona, his personality. So I'm like, okay, you need to handle this carefully. You need to be strategic here. So after he gets annoyed like that, I let it go. I don't push it anymore. But I think about my options. I think I can go into the gas station. I can call my uncle and he can come get me. The problems with that, I have no idea where I am. He is probably at work. So I have no idea how long it's going to take him to actually get to me. It could be 5 minutes. It could be an hour. I have no idea. And I don't want to stand in this sketchy gas station. I was scared. Honestly, I was scared. I was very scared at the thought of just sitting in a gas station by myself, waiting for my uncle. I didn't know my uncle's number by heart. So I'm like, I can write it down, but if I'm not able to do that for whatever reason and my phone dies, I am stranded here without anybody's number. What if no one lets me use their phone? Like, I'm just thinking about all these things. I don't think going and waiting in the gas station is the best option. My phone is at 1% because I turned it on airplane mode earlier. I think I can call the police. I can call the police and tell them I'm being kidnapped and they will send someone out. But unfortunately, we are in an area where I don't think if I were to have called the police that they would have come. I'm saying this from experience. For part of my childhood, I grew up in a similar area like the one that I was in. If you've ever lived in an inner city, if you've ever lived in the hood, you know that sometimes police don't come because they have big issues that they're dealing with and they can't afford to send cops out for what might be a small issue. Having that background, I'm thinking, even if I do call the police, they may not come right away. So if I call them, if I piss this guy off by calling the police, if something happens, the police may not even come in time. So I'm thinking that. And then I'm also thinking there's still a part of me, even though I'm scared at this point, there is a part of me that's thinking, you are still overreacting. So after weighing all of my options, I decide to stay in the car. I decided to stay in the car. I thought it was the safest choice at the time. The son finally comes back out of the gas station. He's empty-handed. So I don't know if he actually got his check. I don't see anything in his hands. Maybe he put it in his pocket, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I was just trying to see if anything that they were saying is true. I didn't see evidence of anything being true. He gets back in the car, the taxi driver, and his tone, his mood has changed because I'm thinking he's still annoyed at me asking him to take me back home or drop me off because I've asked at this point probably 4 or 5 times. But he says, we're heading back to campus now. And we're driving and we're driving. And it literally looks like we are just aimlessly driving. And at this point, I'm thinking we should probably be heading to the highway so that we can get on the highway that takes us back to campus. And I don't see us getting any closer to a highway. It literally looks like we are making random turns. We are just aimlessly driving. Granted, because I don't know where we are, it literally just seems like we are driving in circles. And so I'm like, is he trying to confuse me so that I don't know where we are, so that like my bearings are completely gone? I don't know. I don't know. I am pretty terrified. I am terrified. I start feeling such like deep regret because I'm thinking I should have got out of the car while we were at the gas station. And I'm trying to be composed so that I don't seem suspicious. Because at this point, I have been in this car for over an hour just driving. So I turned my phone on because remember, I turned it on airplane mode. I was trying to preserve battery. So I text my boyfriend, if you don't hear from me in the next 20 minutes, call 911. He responds, WTF, where are you? What's going on? I go to reply, my phone dies. I think to myself, you're trapped in this taxi. No one knows where you are. Your phone is dead. You're not getting out of this. You are not going home. You have been kidnapped. I'm on the brink of tears. And I don't believe that this man that's in the car is the taxi driver's son. And I'm convinced that I am about to be trafficked. I am so scared. So I'm in the back seat. I'm trying to keep it together. I'm trying not to cry. I'm praying. I'm praying so hard. I'm like, God, please just let me out of this. Please give me, oh, geez. Please give me guidance to know what to do to get out of this situation. Please just let me make it back alive. The only thing that I think to do is to make him think that there is somebody waiting for me and that there's someone looking for me. Which at this point, my boyfriend is looking for me. Little, I didn't know at the time, but he was looking for me. I put my phone to my face and I pretend to talk to my very concerned, overprotective boyfriend. So I say, hey, do you mind if I make a quick call? And I say this to him because I want him to tune into my conversation. I want him to know that I'm on the phone because I want him to be listening to what I'm saying. So he says, yeah, no problem, make a call. Literally, I'm talking to no one because remember, my phone is dead. So I pretend to have a conversation. This is how the conversation goes. And this is exactly what I did. Hey, I got your text. What's wrong? Yeah, I know we were supposed to be back a long time ago, but yeah, we just ran a couple errands. The driver was super nice. He just wanted to go on a couple errands. We should be getting back in the next 10 minutes or so. Yeah, you don't need to come get me. I am okay. The driver is nice. Oh, the company is, whatever the name of the company was. It's fine. We will be home in 10 minutes. Yes, if you don't hear from me in 10 minutes, yes, you can come get me. I will give you the address of exactly where I am and you can come get me. But like, I really think you're overreacting. I will give you my exact location. Okay, 10 minutes. I promise you, 10 minutes. Come get me if you don't hear from me in 10 minutes. And I'm trying to make it seem like my boyfriend is really worried and overprotective and like he's going to come looking for me in 10 minutes. And I say that, I repeat that a couple of times because I want them all to hear and I want them to think that there is a man coming to get me, that there's a man coming to look for me. So that you all, whatever y'all plan to do, you need to redirect those plans and get me back to campus in 10 minutes or you're going to have someone out looking for me. So we drive. Honestly, I lost track. I don't know how long we were driving for. I start to see the area surrounding our campus. Wave of complete relief just completely washes over me. I have to do everything not to just completely break down because I'm not out of the woods yet. We finally pull up to campus. I'm getting my wallet out of my purse and I'm ready to pay because I want to get out of this car. I just want to get out of this car. So he turns to me and he says, the total is, it was 3 times what I paid to get to the testing center. Meaning he kept the meter on for all of those extra errands that we were running and made me pay for it. All I wanted was to get out of the car. He could have charged me 10 times. And if I had it on me, I would have paid it because I just wanted to get out of the car. So I get my money, I give it to him. I'm not even listening to what he's saying. I am closing the door mid-sentence. I just want to get out. He pulls off. I see my boyfriend coming to me and I literally just collapse in his arms. I start crying and he's freaking out because he doesn't know what happened. I tell him, I think I was almost kidnapped. In front of the gate, we see the public safety officers. They see me crying and they're like, what happened? Are you okay? I tell them what happened and there's nothing that we can do. We can't like press charges because he didn't actually do anything. I can't prove that I was kidnapped because I was, I'm at campus now. So there's really nothing that we could have done. I say like, I just want to go sleep and just go back to my dorm. To this day, I don't know what this man was trying to do. He could have just been an inconsiderate, oblivious, middle-aged man. That could have been all it was. Or he could have had another plan for me that was a lot more dangerous than I even want to think about. Because where this happened, the city trafficking is at an all-time high. it was at an all-time high. It's even worse now. I don't know whether me making that call changed the fate of that trip, but when I think back on that story, I really think that it did. And I thank God that I got out of that taxi. And when I think back on it, I think, what could I have done differently? And the moment that I think about it is when he first asked me, do you mind if we run an errand? I was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable even in that moment. I allowed my people pleasing tendencies to take over. And I ignored that little voice for the sake of being agreeable and being polite and being nice. We were only 5 minutes from the testing center at that point. I wish that I would have said, you know what? I don't really feel comfortable with that. If you need to run an errand, please take me back to the testing center and I will call another taxi. Today, that's what I would have done. I was only 20 at the time. I did not have the ability to speak up for myself and advocate for myself in the way that I do now. I just want this to be a lesson. When you feel like something is not right, no one else's perception of you matters. We are taught to be agreeable. We're taught not to question things. Not listening to those messages can literally save our lives. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some value from this video. In the meantime, you got it, and we'll talk soon.